The money in your pocket, it's not really yours. Those numbers in your bank account, not yours either. Even the cash printed by your own government isn't entirely under its control. Every single day, billions of us use money without ever asking the most fundamental question: who actually owns it? Americans trust the dollar. Europeans rely on the euro. The British depend on the pound. But who's really pulling the strings? And more importantly, how does this ownership actually work? The answer is far more complex and, frankly, more disturbing than most people can imagine. The modern monetary system has created a power structure unlike anything in history. And sitting at the very top of this pyramid are a handful of unelected, unaccountable institutions that control the entire world economy. But here's the part that no one ever tells you. The question of who owns money is really the question of who owns your freedom. And this whole story starts with a single, fateful decision made back in 1971. On August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon walked into a television studio and announced something that would change the global economy forever. He declared that the United States would no longer convert its dollars to gold at a fixed rate. In one single move, he completely severed the last link between money and anything real or tangible. Most Americans watching that Sunday evening broadcast had no idea what they had just witnessed. They had just seen the most significant monetary shift in all of human history. The Bretton Woods system, the financial anchor for the world since the end of World War II, was dead. In its place, something completely new emerged. A world where money was backed by nothing more than promises. Nixon called it a temporary measure. Well, 53 years later, we're still living in that temporary system. But why did this happen? The official story is that America was trying to protect its gold reserves from foreign speculators. But the real story is far more revealing. By 1971, the United States had been printing dollars far beyond its actual gold reserves. This was to finance the hugely expensive Vietnam War and expanding domestic social programs. Other countries, especially France under Charles de Gaulle, had figured this out. They started showing up and demanding gold in exchange for their mountains of US dollars, just as the agreement stipulated. America faced a choice: honor the gold standard and watch its gold reserves evaporate, or just abandon the system entirely. Nixon chose to break the rules rather than play by them. And that single decision fundamentally changed who controls money forever. When money was backed by gold, ownership was simple. You either owned physical gold or you owned a piece of paper that was a direct promise to receive that gold. But when Nixon closed the gold window, something extraordinary happened. Money became nothing more than a government decree. Economists call this fiat currency, from the Latin phrase meaning "let it be done." Think of it like this. Imagine you and your friends use poker chips to trade with each other. Originally, each chip could be exchanged for a specific amount of, say, gold. Then suddenly, the person who runs the poker game announces that the chips are no longer backed by gold. They're just worth whatever everyone agrees they're worth from now on. Who really owns those chips now? Is it the person who prints them or the people who use them? This is exactly what happened to every major currency on Earth after 1971. The dollar, the pound, the yen, they all became poker chips in a global game where the rules were written by the very people who controlled the printing presses. But here's the twist. Even governments don't fully control their own money supply anymore. That incredible power has been delegated to central banks, institutions that operate with a degree of independence that would make medieval kings jealous. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan. These institutions have a very peculiar legal status. They're not quite government agencies, but they're not exactly private corporations either. They exist in a strange twilight zone between public and private control. Let's take the Federal Reserve, the most powerful central bank in the world. It was created back in 1913 as a compromise. Some people wanted government control of money, while Wall Street bankers wanted private control. The result was a hybrid system that was neither, and also both. The Fed's Board of Governors is appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate, which makes it seem like a government institution. But the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks are actually owned by the commercial member banks in their districts. And this is where it gets really strange. These member banks receive guaranteed dividends on their Federal Reserve stock, currently set at 6% annually. So when you ask who owns the dollar, the answer gets very murky. The Federal Reserve creates dollars, literally out of thin air, with digital entries on computer screens. But the Fed itself is owned by banks which are owned by shareholders, which include pension funds, insurance companies, and wealthy individuals from all over the world. This means that the most important financial decisions that affect every single American, interest rates, the money supply, lending policies, are made by an institution that is partially owned by the very financial system it's supposed to be regulating. It's like having the poker game supervised by players who also own shares in the casino. But what if I told you that the system is even more rigged than that? That these central banks are just one layer in a global financial hierarchy, and above them sits an even more secretive and powerful institution? Welcome to the world of the Bank for International Settlements, or the BIS. Located in Basel, Switzerland, the BIS is often called the Central Bank for Central Banks. Founded in 1930, its original purpose was to handle German war reparations after World War I. Today, its members are 63 of the world's most important central banks, including the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and the European Central Bank. The BIS operates with a level of immunity and secrecy that is almost unheard of. Its premises in Switzerland are considered foreign territory. Its officials have diplomatic immunity. Its archives are sealed for 30 years. And its assets cannot be seized, even in wartime. It pays no taxes. In effect, it's a sovereign financial state operating outside the laws of any country. So, who owns the BIS? Its shareholders are the central banks that are its members. This means that the private banking interests that have a stake in institutions like the Federal Reserve are also, by extension, stakeholders in the bank that coordinates global monetary policy. It's a closed loop. An exclusive club where the world's most powerful financiers meet in secret to make decisions that affect every single person on this planet. They decide on global banking regulations, coordinate responses to financial crises, and set the long-term agenda for the future of money. And when the heads of the Fed, the ECB, and the Bank of Japan meet at the BIS, they're not accountable to you or me or any elected government. They are accountable only to each other and the system they represent. This brings us to the ultimate question. If a network of interconnected central banks, owned by private financial institutions and coordinated by a secretive supranational body, controls the creation and flow of money, who really owns anything? When you take out a loan, you're not just borrowing money. You're renting it from this system. The interest you pay is the rental fee. Your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card debt, it was all part of a mechanism that transfers wealth from the general population to the owners of the monetary system. Even the money you think you own in your bank account is technically just a loan you've made to the bank. It's an IOU from the bank to you. And in a crisis, as we saw in Cyprus in 2013, the government can decide to take a portion of your savings to bail in the failing bank. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's just how the system is designed to work. It's a system of debt and control, built on a currency that can be created in infinite quantities by those in power. It encourages debt, punishes savers through inflation, and concentrates wealth at the very top. So, what's the solution? The first step is understanding. For too long, the topic of money has been deliberately made complicated and boring to keep the public from asking these very questions. But understanding who owns money is the first step toward reclaiming our financial freedom. From cryptocurrencies that operate outside the central banking system to movements advocating for a return to sound money, backed by real assets, people are starting to look for alternatives. They're questioning why a system that was supposed to be temporary has become a permanent fixture of our lives, and who it truly serves. The truth is, the money in your pocket is a vote. Every time you use it, you're casting a vote for the system that created it. The real power to change this system doesn't lie in Washington or Basel. It lies with us. It begins with asking the right questions and demanding better answers. Because if we don't decide what kind of money we want, someone else will decide for us. Thanks for watching. If this video opened your eyes, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next deep dive into the systems that shape our world.